All right. It's time to get after it. Who's making moves? All right. I'm gonna let you two take the reins on this one. Uh, you guys are my recruiting guys. I need you. I'm on life support from you guys informing me about recruiting. Who's making moves on signing day? Who has made moves in the last couple of weeks, and maybe who flopped? I don't know. We can talk about all of it.
I'm going with the Oregon Ducks. And I don't know if they're making a move on signing day, but you talk about a team that's making moves in the right direction. And we talk about this a lot in terms of player construction and like balancing using the portal, using the high school ranks. And I think Dan Lanning's doing a phenomenal job. I mean, top 5 class in 2024. I think it's going to be a top 5 class in 2025. And then you bring in Dylan Gabriel, Dante Moore, Evan Stewart. I always say this, if I'm buying stock in a program right now, I'm buying stock in the Oregon Ducks. That is a team that I think is trending in the right direction and probably going to be my pick to win the Big Ten next year. Give me the Oregon Ducks.
I don't hate that at all. I really don't hate that. When I start doing my breakdowns and start doing the research, I'm trying to stay as unbiased as possible, but I might be leaning in your direction as well, Jason. CD?
Yeah, to me, I love the Oregon Ducks pick, not only for the future this year and after that. I think they're doing it the right way. You know, you
Yes.
look at their class, their D line, front seven, and even O line class is just awesome. And I think he made an emphasis on that. He was just on the 24/7's recruiting podcast and he talked about it. And they asked him about it. Like, yeah, he's making an emphasis not only to win in the Big Ten, but also with their goals to beyond and obviously compete with the SEC and the best of the rest in college football. This is pretty darn impressive. You mentioned he learned from guys like Kirby Smart and Nick Saban, where that's how you build a program is from the trenches, from within and out, obviously. And also, you kind of can get caught up in rankings sometimes where like, Oregon's not a top 3 class, but what does that actually mean? And like, do you have depth in your class? Do you have positional value and breakdowns at needs at premier positions, right? And they did a really good job here. This is not a fluffy class at all. Like we've seen, teams like Texas or USC have in the past. This is a legit core group, not only in the transfer portal, but also in the high school ranks, which we know is a feeder program. It is the lifeblood of your football program. So yeah, this is super exciting. Not any like top end names, no guys that's gonna wow you like a Ryan Williams or a Cam Coleman or obviously Dylan Raiola for Nebraska, but these guys are all really really good players. Played really good high level football in college and good competitive football. And yeah, that I love that take.
You summed up kind of my take on the like there's not that premier like top 10 guy in their class like the headliner, but you take a look down those rankings. I mean, it's 30 guys that are like 4-star blue chip prospects, a ton of depth. And that was the one position that I talked about as just not being quite good enough for Oregon in 2023, and that was the defensive line. Like you had guys like Brandon Dorless that like flashed, they were good players, but I don't think they had enough difference makers. And like Dan Lanning turns around and goes and gets Elijah Rushing, Aiden Breland, Jericho Johnson, kind of bolstering up those trenches. And you take a look at the skill talent they're bringing in, guys like Gatlin Bear. I mean, that team's going in the right direction. One other team that I would shout out to is Florida State. And I think that's another one of those programs that is kind of Florida State goes to battle with Alabama on the recruiting trail a lot, and you're seeing them put a lot of emphasis on the state of Georgia, going up and recruiting that state. Mike Norvell's got things rolling. And again, that's another one of those programs that I'm buying stock in. I think you might see a tad bit of a rebuilding year in 2024 because I think they lose a lot of NFL talent. And I don't know if they've recruited good enough to kind of rebound and go 13-0 again in 2024. But this is a program that, again, I like what they're doing on the recruiting trail. I like how they marry it with the transfer portal. Probably another team that's, in my mind, trending in the right direction.
Well, for sure. And they also, it could have been better too. They
I
finished with
know.
LJ McCray
Yeah.
and KJ Bolden. It would have been nice if you're a Seminole fan to have those guys in the class, but nonetheless, the point still stands that you made. I really like this class. Luke Kromenhoek, obviously the headliner at quarterback there, but also they just got Amaris Williams, right? Amari Williams, a guy that signed on National Signing Day and early signing day, but kept it quiet until just this past weekend. Another guy, difference maker, like we talked about at the line of scrimmage for them.
Absolutely. Let me ask you guys. I'll ask like a player specifically that has particular interest to me. I don't know if you guys are quite familiar with Ashton Bethel Roman, Arkansas commit. He'd been committed since July, signs his letter of intent in December. His wide receiver coach leaves, goes off to Wisconsin. And all of a sudden, here he is. decommitting, uh, rescinding his national letter of intent, and it seems like he's kind of down to these two schools, Texas A&M and Baylor. So what would it mean to either of those schools if they landed one of those guys, or if they landed Ashton Bethel Roman?
Massive. When I saw that, I thought Texas A&M immediately. I think that'd be another massive addition in that 2024 class. Juice at the wide receiver position. I remember talking about him when he went to Arkansas in the summer as being a nice get. Is probably one of the top remaining guys that is kind of coming down to the finish line, right? You have guys like Terry Bussey who you're not sure. I think Ashton Bethel Roman's probably that other guy, and I think would be massive. I mean, you talk about Texas A&M on signing day Wednesday, landing Terry Bussey and Ashton Bethel Roman, massive win for Mike Elko, 100%.
Yeah, we talked about how important that wide receiver group is. That position is massive. And not that Ashton Bethel Roman would be a consolation at all, because he is a top 150 player in his own right. You mentioned it. I'm sure you talked about it in your video with him earlier in the summer. He is a legit player. Again, a nice pairing for Terry Bussey. And I believe he's a little bit bigger than Bussey, not quite as heavier, but I think a little bit taller, which is obviously you like to have some diversity in your room. But also thinking about Baylor's side is they're kind of treading water right now. Dave Aranda, since that 2021 year when they went to the Sugar Bowl, a lot of things have changed there. Obviously, they're down at 68th nationally, which is not where they need to be to, right the ship there. So this will be a nice momentum at the end for a team that's really looking to kind of, bolster the way and find their own spot in the new Big 12.
That's one of those, such a fan of Dave Aranda and what he can do from like a football mind. I think he's one of the better defensive minds that we see. Not a great recruiter. Like, let's just put it that way. And you have to, I mean, at the end of the day, I had this conversation with my dad, who's much more old school. It's about culture. But at the end of the day, like, football is a speed size game. Like, you got to get it done on the recruiting trail. And I mean, Dave Aranda, definitely strong football mind, strong culture builder, needs to get it going on the recruiting trail. What are they bringing DeQuan Finn in the portal? I think that was a sneaky good get for them. This would be huge for Dave Aranda, who, again, is a program that you really want to see pick it up on the recruiting trail, specifically kind of playing in that Big 12 conference.
Yeah, I do want to bring up, let me ask you guys this. If you were a wide receiver, would you rather play for Jake Spavital, the offensive coordinator at Baylor, who has coached, I don't know, maybe Mike Evans, David Sills, Karan White, Gary Jennings, Jeremiah Hunter most recently, or would you rather get coached by Colin Klein and what he's brought to the table recently in his offenses?
I mean, situationally, the thing with Baylor is I don't know if Dave Aranda is going to be there in 12 months, quite frankly. And
I agree.
Yeah. So I'd probably want to go play for Spavital, but I don't know what the future looks like for Baylor 12, 18 months down the road. Texas A&M, I think you have a better feel. And Coach Colin Klein, not necessarily a wide receiver factory. I mean, they've had some guys, Phillip Brooks comes to mind, but that's a more balanced offense. But if I'm Ashton Bethel Roman, I'm probably going to a program that I know what it's going to look like in 12 months. And I think that's Texas A&M over Baylor. Unfortunately, I've never had the privilege of being an elite athlete to choose between schools, but if I had, that's probably where I'm leaning.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with you there. Part of the reason why he left Arkansas was his wide receiver coach, right? Kenny Guyton left to Wisconsin, so he opted out of his NIL or NLI. I'm sorry about that, and obviously he wants stability and change. And I think Baylor's making a push, doing the best they can. But yeah, A&M is the right fit here. And you mentioned Colin Klein. Yeah, they didn't have Phillip Brooks, really good player in his own right. Like, he only had 500, he did hit less than 600 yards, right, last year. But part of that is because of who you have offensively. You have a two-headed monster at running back. You have two quarterbacks that are probably better at running the football than they are throwing the football at times. And obviously a stud tight end and Ben Sanute that we all love. So yeah, I think I do think with stability and culture and everything else, obviously getting a chance to play in the SEC is a big factor as well. Showing off against the best of the best. Texas A&M makes a lot of sense.
And I guess one thing to add, sorry, we're going long here, but Connor Wigman, I'm such a believer. And I know you'd be fired up to hear that, but I think Connor Wigman's got it all. If that offensive line figures it out. That was mean, I don't want to turn this into a Texas A&M podcast right now, but I think Connor
Hey,
Wigman
why not?
with the good, with the good offensive line, man, I think he's the truth. I went back and we were doing a deep dive on the Texas A&M offensive skill positions. I went back and watched a little of that game against Miami, and I mean, blitz pickups were atrocious for Texas A&M. Connor Wigman just standing in there, firing some throws. I'm a believer in Connor Wigman. So
0 sacks in that game, by the way.
yeah,
0 sacks.
But when I was looking up the PFF,
One season,
like 27 pressures, like 8 quarterback hits. Like this dude was under duress all game, and he was just stepping up, delivering really nice footballs. I'm telling you, if Mike Elko and Adam Cushion, I think on the offensive line gets that group ready, I mean, I am such a believer in Connor Wigman and what he can do in 2024.
Yeah, and the bowl game too. Like, but I think it's also important, like for these wide receivers that potentially go, like Ashton Bethel Roman or Terry Bussey, whatever it is, or speedster, 5'8". Shoot, I'm forgetting. Whatever. There's another receiver committed.
Oh yeah, he
A&M.
was committed to Campbell.
Ernest.
Ernest
Wait.
Campbell.
Ernest Campbell. Yeah.
Yeah,
good pull.
Yeah,
Great pull, Jason. By the way, come on. I'm the A&M guy here, and you're just pulling names left and right. That's crazy. But definitely, like Marcel Reed, I thought was really good in the Oklahoma State game. So, like, I think this A&M class, I think it was really impressive for what they did. Like having to go through that coaching change and absolute exodus in the transfer portal. Oh no, it's over, right? And you have Texas and Oklahoma moving into the SEC, which is a huge recruiting pressure for A&M, right? When Texas is up and you're down, like it is tough to climb out of that ditch, right? Because those recruiting battles that you need to win, that Houston area that you recruit so well, all of a sudden, like it's over, right? So that insane response by Mike Elko, insane response. So I think this class, it might not end up in the top 15. It may not, but like I think it's insanely impressive for what was going on this offseason.
agreed.
So any other teams that are making moves?
I'd like to throw in Auburn real quick.
Yes.
We talked about them just a little bit this year, or in this video here. What they did, I thought, especially offensively, we saw the woes that they had, and a guy like Hugh Freeze, you don't expect that from. But if you look at the talent in that room, their O-line transfers didn't quite hit like they wanted to. You know, we all know the quarterback Peyton Thorne there is not quite the guy that they thought they were getting, or maybe is exactly who they thought they were getting, and that's kind of who they had to play. But Cam Coleman, obviously the headliner, we talked about a little bit earlier. He's a freak, 6'3", from the state of Alabama. Huge recruiting win. Once committed to A&M down there in College Station. But yeah, massive in-state win there. Perry Thompson, another wide receiver, right? Another in-state wide receiver from Foley, Alabama, right where Julio Jones was from as well. And then obviously on the trenches, which we talked about, kind of a common theme of this video, Amaris Williams, Jamonte Waller, and some other guys. I really like it. Not to mention Walker White, right? A top 50 quarterback or top 50 player at the quarterback position is also not a bad cherry on top for this class.
Huge echo with that. I think Auburn did a phenomenal job, and I maybe left a little bit to be desired in the transfer portal, but I think Hugh Freeze put a lot of emphasis on building that 2024 class, and obviously headlined by, and I'm happy you brought up the trenches, because I think all the credit goes to, all right, Cam Coleman, Perry Thompson, phenomenal players, right? Cam Coleman's going to be special. I love what they did on the defensive line. You said Amaris Williams. This dude, in my mind, is a freak show. And I think he's going to be phenomenal for Auburn. You're talking about teams that I think are trending in the right direction, especially with all the, question marks you have around that Alabama program. Like, sign me up for the Auburn Tigers. And again, depending on the quarterback position in 2024, maybe some growing pains there. But we always say, like, Auburn and Hugh Freeze, they're building for 2025, 2026. Fire me up for the Auburn Tigers, because I think that's a program that's going in the right direction.